Back to one of our top stories now. Total has made a significant natural gas discovery off the southern Cape Coast. For more on this story, I'm joined via Skype by Chris Bredenhann, who leads PricewaterhouseCoopers Africa Oil and Gas Advisory Practice. Chris, thank you so much for your time this morning. Obviously, a lot of this will sound very complex and very scientific for ordinary South Africans. But the press release from Total in making this announcement is that they believe, or there was belief, that this could indeed be a game changer. Can you tell us why?
Indeed, yeah. Good afternoon. I think Total's announcement follows various attempts to explore off the South African coast for natural gas and oil. This was not the first attempt of Total to explore in this specific field off the south coast of South Africa. It's located in a very complex and difficult position in terms of sea streams and weather, and they've persevered. They've drilled in water that's 1,400 meters deep and then gone to a depth of more than 3,600 meters to find what they termed a significant resource. Now, what is important is that this first exploration phase follows on from desktop work, seismic work that provides an indication as to the potential availability of oil or gas. Drilling then proves this, and there are various steps to follow from this to size this, to test it. So further work will still be required, and they've themselves have indicated that the number of further wells will be drilled. But the significance of this, I think, lies in the fact that it proves some of the speculation, some of the seismic work that was done, that there are hydrocarbons to be found off the South African coast. The second important thing for me about this is the fact that it probably will encourage further drilling activity by other players. So Total as a major oil and gas company, international oil and gas company, has this block that they've explored. Further to the north of them, eNCA, the Italian major, and Equinor, or previously known as Statoil, the Norwegian national oil company, all have exploration rights, and so do other majors as well. And I think this would act as the impetus for further interest and activity. This field is also sort of fairly close to the PetroSA gas fields and oil fields that they've been producing from, and it could be interesting to understand what the future opportunities could mean for PetroSA as well in terms of these finds.
Now, so speaking of PetroSA, I found a piece off our news wires about 8 months ago that stated that South Africa's flagship gas-to-liquids refinery at Mossel Bay could run out of natural gas within 2 years when offshore reserves dry up. And that was according to a senior energy official that had been quoted in that Reuters story. It sounds like there's some major competition in that exact area. How is that managed? Or how is that looked after, especially in terms of the environmental impact?
Okay, so PetroSA has been running a gas-to-liquids plant, so a synthetic fuel facility, converting natural gas that comes off the south coast as well for a great number of years. Through a plant that is based in Mossel Bay. It's produced high-quality liquid fuels, diesel, petrol, for the South African market. Unfortunately, as with any resources, they're finite, or hydrocarbon resources are finite, and we're reaching the end of the lifespan of this gas field that provided the feedstock for that plant. So PetroSA is in a phase of considering what other feedstocks they could put through their plant to ensure the future sustainability of that business. But also they're entering a phase where they would need to go through the abandonment of that offshore production facility, and with that they have certain requirements that they need to meet in terms of our environmental legislation, in terms of safely shutting down the operations and the wells that are associated with that. So we do have in the country very strict environmental regulations that require companies like PetroSA and any of the other extractive industries to carefully manage their impact on the environment. They're subject to monitoring, and when it comes to end of life, not to just abandon it, and the environmental issue becomes a risk for the state to carry, but it is something that needs to be managed by those oil companies as well.
Now, according to the statement that Total sent out, they say here the Block 11B, 12B covers an area of 19,000 square kilometers with water depths ranging from 200 to 1,800 meters. Again, from an environmental aspect, I just keep thinking that's a lot of sea area where the environment could be impacted. But also, it sounds like it costs a pretty penny to be doing this kind of work over such a large space and area.
Yes, I think the regulatory regime that we have in South Africa around oil and gas exploration allows oil and gas companies, exploration companies, to get access or to blocks, to exploration blocks, and they're typically fairly large, and then they enter into desktop studies, seismic studies, and so forth to find within that large block that they have the most viable locations where they could drill. So you wouldn't necessarily find drilling activity across the entire block, but you get rights to explore that entire block. It should be noted that before an oil company is allowed to enter the area with a drill rig and start drilling, there are fairly onerous requirements on them to come up with an environmental management plan that needs to be submitted to various authorities for approval. And those plans deal with how various impacts are, what the various impacts might be, and how the risks associated with that might be managed, be it in the form of marine, the marine life, whether it's pollution, whether it's spills and so forth. So careful plans must be prepared. And I think there's been quite a lot of developments. Probably the most notable development in the recent past has been the Macondo incident in the Gulf of Mexico, where there was a problem and pollution resulted. From that, I think various regulators have learned a number of lessons, and there's a constant improvement of the health and safety and environment requirements and the compliance that oil companies have, because a slippage in terms of that or an accident does have major implications for the future sustainability, irrespective of how big a company is. A company could be as big as the biggest oil company in the world, but it could have disastrous impacts on its future sustainability if they do not manage those risks.
One more question before I let you go. We've received a statement from Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe, who welcomed this gas discovery. But I couldn't help but notice in the statement, Total says they have a 45% working interest alongside Qatar Petroleum, 25%, something called CNR International, 20%, and Mainstream, a South African consortium, has a 10% interest. How do we work out what the real benefit would be to the South African economy, other than this Main Street South African consortium, and one would hope jobs and the local economy in the Mossel Bay area?
Very good point. I think our in-house team of economists have done various economic impact assessments around the impacts that various industries has on the South African economy, and based on their research, for every rand of revenue generated by the oil and gas industry, there's about a R1.54 addition to the GDP. For every R1,000,000 spent in the industry, it can sustain 4 jobs per annum. And I think quite importantly, we do have a regulatory regime in the country that provides for royalty payments to the South African government on the oil and gas that is produced. So the government and the South African economy will benefit through that revenue, and that revenue doesn't just flow from the South African component of it, it's on the production from that field. The economy benefits as a result of job creation, and also it has impacts around the future security of supply. And in addition, it clearly is as part of one of the national priorities that have been put forward in the NDP as well. So all of this plays quite well into a positive outlook. I think there's work to be done now to prove all of this up, and it won't happen overnight, but it will have a significant positive impact on the economy going forward.